Hey everyone, I'm Josh Loftus, and this is the Everyday and Monday podcast, the podcast where we talk about everyday people doing everyday things in everyday churches. Whether you're a pastor, a plumber, or an overly obnoxious morning person, this podcast is for you. This is where we find value in the trenches of Christian life. Welcome to Everyday a Monday. And in the trenches with me today, I have a very special guest. He's the author of the books The Pastor's Kid and The Curious Christian. He's a co-host of the Happy Rant podcast, and I believe you are a die-hard Minnesota Vikings fan. I have Mr. Barnabas Piper with me today. Barnabas, how are you doing, sir?
I was doing great right up until you mentioned Monday morning people and the Vikings. Those are two things that regularly just rip my heart out. So,
is there any other kind of Vikings fan other than a diehard Vikings fan? Like, is there I feel like if you have to be a Vikings fan, you got to be all in, man.
Yeah, if you want to be a fan for more than about 2 or 3 seasons. Like if you're a Die Easy fan, then you stick around for a couple seasons. You go, oh, that's how this works. I'm gonna go watch a different sport, or root for a different team. But yeah,
like bowling. Yeah.
If like me, you grew up in Minneapolis and you could actually hear the cheering from the Metrodome, which no longer exists, from your front yard. Yeah. The purple glow sort of surrounds you, and for better and lots of worse.
Yeah. Growing up really not having a choice, right? Oh, man. So, all right. Well, Barnabas, before we get going here, man, if you'd not mind giving our listeners just a short bio of who you are, just kind of who you are, what you do for a living. I know that you just recently had a job change from many years in the publishing realm into more of a ministry role. So just give us a little bit about you, man.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I grew up in Minneapolis. Dad's a pastor there. And I don't know who your listeners are, but his name is John Piper, if anybody knows who that is.
Yeah, and yes, it is the John Piper. Okay. Yeah.
So I figured I'd just put that out there rather than, if somebody was wondering. So that was my upbringing. By and large, very happy upbringing, although being a pastor's kid does have its challenges. That's why I wrote a book about it. But loved the church growing up. It was kind of my base of operations, my family. And so that was, came to faith early. Went to Wheaton College, so moved to Illinois, stayed in the area after college, got married right after school, had 2 daughters, worked in publishing for, probably about 8 years there. And so between Crossway Books and Moody Publishers with another job in between, and then moved to Nashville in 2013. Sadly, my marriage came to an end in 2016. That's a whole other story, but
sure.
So I'm still in the Nashville area, as is my ex-wife, and so my daughters are with me most of the time or half the time, and so. As God has been gracious, that's been good because it means that they still get to be part of the church family that I'm part of now, which is Emmanuel Nashville, and still get to be very much part of their life and be a real dad, not sort of a distant dad or the visitation thing, which can be really, really tough. So that's been good. But yeah, so I worked at Lifeway and B&H Publishers. So that's the book publishing part of Lifeway for about 6 years, doing a couple different roles, church leadership development, marketing, some product development. And then just at the beginning of August, made the change from Lifeway and publishing to move on staff at Emmanuel to be the director for community, which is largely focused on small group ministry, but also just broader community within the church. So how are we connecting with new people? How is the life of the church working? That's kind of the bigger vision.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's the short version of life.
Cool. Well, that's great, man. Well, congrats on the new job. That's really neat. And how has it been being a congregational member there at a church where Ray Ortland's preaching? Because that guy's a preacher, man. I like him a lot.
Yeah, so I've talked to a handful of people on staff and just around the church, and having been around so much preaching in my life, so grew up under my dad's preaching. Then in the Christian publishing world, I was at multiple conferences every year, so you just heard like the buffet of great preachers out there, and as well as a buffet of not great preachers.
Yeah.
I feel like in most cases, I can listen to a sermon and go, I understand how they put this together. I know his process because I've kind of seen how he does it, but that doesn't that doesn't equate to what happens on a Sunday morning. There's just
Sure.
a unique gift and anointing there. But I will say this, so I walked into Emmanuel just over 2 years ago, summer of 2017, and was just at a very tired, worn out, burned down kind of place in life, personally,
Sure.
spiritually. And I walked into Emmanuel, and Ray wasn't there, which was maybe the best thing, because I discovered that this is a whole church, not a church built around a single person, which is great. But the welcome that is consistent at Emmanuel starts with, to all who are weary, come. And so they basically just sort of threw down the gauntlet of welcome and said, well, this is who we are.
Right.
Which then put me in a position to go, okay, now prove it. And over the course of the next several months, just time and again, they did, especially, Ray's preaching, TJ's preaching, the pastoral care, everything. And so it's one of the best churches I have experienced in terms of seeing how grace extends from the preaching of the word into the way that people are cared for, into the life of the community, the honesty between believers, the grace shown for those who are struggling, whether it's struggling with sin or struggling with fatigue or doubt or whatever it is. A lot of people land there needing a place to heal, and God uses the church to help them. So it's a unique place that way, which is why I was happy to end up on staff there. Most churches I would not be dying to end up on staff at. Like I didn't have an aspiration of being in vocational church ministry.
Sure. Yeah,
but this church, this context, especially given the role it's played in my life, it's just sort of a unique. I feel like I don't know. I feel like I'm cheating every day because I'm like I don't feel
I actually like what I do.
I know.
I like working, right? Yeah.
To be fair, I liked what I did in publishing, but it was very clearly like this is my work.
Right.
And at Emmanuel, it's more like these are just my people.
Yeah.
And I do things to help the people, and it feels very different than like project work or selling work or development work. It's just, and that's not to disparage. It's just a very different kind of context, unique to it being my home church. If you're ever visiting Nashville, you listeners, you just go to emmanuelnashville.com, and we would love to have you swing by and visit.
There we
if
go.
You're looking for a church, or if you move to town, like everybody else seems to be doing. I think there's like 47 new people a day who move to Nashville. So
that's right. It's either Seattle or Nashville, like for some reason, right?
Yeah, I think Nashville's sort of on the Seattle pace, just a few years behind, in that it was sort of like this cool regional city that is now becoming a high-priced like regional hub where with traffic to to make you want to leave sometimes.
Right. Well, it's turning into like everybody who wants some sort of career in music and is horrible at it goes to Nashville. Anybody who wants some sort of career in like coffee making goes to Seattle and they're horrible at it. Right.
I'll trade you some bad musicians for some bad coffee people just to kind of even things out.
We'll send some people down your way. Yeah, we've got plenty.
It's like trading late draft picks in the NFL. It's like, I don't know, one man's trash is another man's trash. Here you go.
That's right. It's all gonna suck, and anyway, that's okay. Let's just go with it. So, Barnabas, what ways there? We already talked about some things that you appreciate about Emmanuel, ways that you're plugged in. What ways would you say Emmanuel does a good job in facilitating and encouraging getting plugged into community there and getting plugged into service? It sounds like it's kind of your job. So, basically I'm asking like, how good are you at your job? Tell us why we should hire you, Barnabas. Yeah.
At the time, when I came to Emmanuel, there was an MO among the people of being very welcoming, which I think has continued. As the church grows, it gets more challenging because it's just easy to overlook people. It's easy, the bigger a church gets, the smaller the circles of people get who know each other. Sure. They have a midweek men's and women's, we have a midweek men's and women's theology, which is a time of studying the word, honest and open, confession and prayer with other people. Mm-hmm. Not in the classic accountability group way where it's like we all come and talk about how we looked at porn again this week and we say we probably shouldn't do that, and then we go and just let's meet back same time, same place, and talk about it again next week.
Everybody sits in a circle, bad coffee, and we're all awkwardly talking. Yeah.
This had a very distinctly different feel, which is you come and the context is such that We want to make it the safest place possible for people to confess or unburden themselves of anything. So I've talked to guys about same-sex attraction and broken marriages and job loss and suicidal thoughts and whatever, like the full spectrum. But then what happens is all you do is pray for them. Now, maybe out of that, after that, you say, let's grab lunch sometime, and it develops into a relationship, something that's mutually beneficial. But in the context, it's just that. That was really helpful because it was a context that helped me realize that there is a culture of respect and safety, but also brutal honesty. And the idea that if you're struggling, the idea is we want you to be able to struggle. We also don't want you to stay in your struggle, which is, I think a lot of churches, if they lean into the grace of you can bring your questions, you can bring your struggles, are not often pushing people to then grow as believers, to grow in sanctification. And that was, that was there here. So there was we want you to move from a place of brokenness to a place of healing, from a place of struggle to a place of wholeness and strength, etc. So the bigger the church, the less things happen accidentally. The less you accidentally connect with somebody, you accidentally make a friend, the less you run into an opportunity. There kind of have to be created and intentional opportunities if you want to be part of this thing. And you get to know people, you get plugged in, you become, and like in the men's thing, I just sort of slowly became more invested, spoke more often in terms of just participation, was then asked, what about leading this once a month?
Sure.
Which was a bait and switch, because by once a month he meant do that for 2 months and then it's just, you just take over, you just lead the thing. And that's just sort of the way it happened, which again for me was wonderful because I didn't have aspirations, and if I had aspirations to lead, I don't think I would have trusted them because I don't trust my own ego. And I know that the Bible says, it is a good thing to aspire to the position of elder or pastor.
Right.
I know that's true.
Yeah.
I know that in my heart, that aspiration usually or is often mixed with a sense of I like being up front, I like being in charge, I like whatever that is, which I'm especially seeing the way a lot of church leaders have fallen in the last few years.
Right.
I'm very nervous and conscientious about pride and ego. Yeah, the way that all lined up was something that God did. I'm glad I was open to it. That's a softening of the heart. And then opportunities coming to me as people observe things, as opposed to me kind of forcing the issue.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. And I want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier. How would you go about? Because I guess it does fall under your job description. How would you go about encouraging somebody who comes to you, or you come to them and you realize that either for reasons of ignorance or for some other perhaps more sinister reason, I don't know, some more personal reason, they don't want to put the work into getting plugged in at church, right? Where they have the opportunity, but they don't see the value in serving. They don't see the value in joining a small group. They don't see the value in getting plugged into the community there. How would you go about encouraging them and starting to build that foundation of why it's important to do that?
I mean, on a one-to-one basis, it really depends on what the motivation is behind their reluctance or their lack of motivation to get plugged in. So I had a conversation with a guy a couple weeks ago, so sort of right after I started. It was one of those like, oh, you're the small groups guy? I have a question for you. And it was sort of posed as a challenge, which, again...
Which is always a great way to start a convo.
And especially for somebody like me who tends to rise to challenges in a I'm going to win type of way, which is it's not helpful at all in these contexts. Like that needs to stay.
That's not helpful in ministry. What? Hold on.
Yeah, I know. Shocker, right? But he was basically like, look, I serve in these areas in the church, volunteer in these ways. I get together with these guys on Friday mornings for, studying the word, just like prayer, whatever. And I've got this group of friends who are, I have community in the church, but it's not like a small group. And he's basically like, what do I need small groups for? It was hard for me not to just immediately fire back so that you're not a selfish jerk. which was my
Which
gut.
is technically the answer.
Right. It was my gut instinct to just sort of slap him down.
Right.
So this is a moment of me confessing my heart to the podcast audience who doesn't know me, because that's the right place to confess, right?
Yeah, it's really the only place if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's the only place to do it.
The conversation I kind of had to rein myself in was basically trying to help him see that participation in community is not for you only. Like, if it's not benefiting you at all, maybe it's a bad community. Maybe your heart has some issues. But if you are disinclined to be in it at all, that means that you are not considering how the life of the body works. People in a potential small group for this guy and his wife would benefit from their presence.
Right.
They would benefit from the conversations he has on Friday mornings with those men, the friendships he has with those people, what comes out of those, that life, that spiritual life, that enjoyment, whatever. That needs to feed back into the church. So that's one kind of motivation. Is it a selfish motivation? I just don't need this. I have other opportunities. Right. I think there's another very common reluctance motivation is it's awkward and scary. Okay. And that's 100% true. Walking into a new group, it's basically like blind dating a group of people.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
You go to the sign up thing and they put you in you get sort of like directed to a small group leader. He's like, man, we meet on Tuesdays at 7. We'd love to have you. We meet at this person's house. You're like, I don't know the people. I kind of know that part of town.
It's going to be a weird potato salad.
Right. Like, am I bringing food? Is food provided? If you're new, like, are you expected to bring something? Do people bring like hot dogs, or do people bring like filet mignon? Like, what are we talking about here? It's everything is a question. And then you roll in and you're like, I don't like these people, or I don't, or just more neutrally, I don't know these people. So they're going to dive into a time of studying the word. How is this challenging me? And you're like, I don't know how safe it is to open up in this group. So everything is weird. That's a good reason to be reluctant. It's not a good reason to stay out of a group, but it's a really normal feeling. Yes. And I think that's another one of those things where you just kind of like where I was at when I came in, and I just looked at it and thought, I need this. I need this for me. And I need to be in a community. I have a conviction that I need to be part of a church, and attendance on Sunday morning is not part of a church. That's part of an event. It's a piece of part of a church, because that is the preaching of the word, that is corporate worship. But if that's all you're doing, it's the least invested way. And so you essentially just have to look yourself in the mirror and go, the risk isn't that great. Like, what's the worst that can happen? It's awkward and you leave. Yeah. Oh, too bad. Yeah. The idea of church body is that I am pouring into it with everything I have. Mm-hmm. And everybody else who I'm connected to is pouring into it with everything they have, which means by the math, if there are 5 people in a group and I'm pouring in, that means I'm getting 4 other people pouring into me. And so that there should be a net gain, or everything you pour out, you get filled back up. And so that's what people miss, because they look at it and they're like, this is a sacrifice. Yeah, it is. You're giving up something, but you're also getting back so much, and the purpose is bigger than you.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. I could not agree more. Yeah, it's very important to realize that when you give of your time and your efforts, that is given back to you. That the best way that you can receive blessing and community and encouragement from the church is you giving it. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the people who don't want to put anything in. Well, you're sacrificing the thing that would be the very best for you. Right. I want to give of myself here because I know that that's going to be exactly what I need, and that's what's going to be given back to me. Right. Completely agree. Keeping just kind of in the vein of church, especially with who your dad is, and I know the events and the situations that you must have found yourself in. I am sure that you, above possibly any of the guests that I have had so far, have those stories right? You have the the unforgettable moments, the just kind of like the what in the world is happening right now in regards to church. So question, Barnabas, pull back the screen a little bit for us of either it could be something from your childhood or something that happened recently. Give us one of the most unforgettable or funniest church experiences that you have ever had.
Yeah, that's interesting because on the church side, I feel like my upbringing was kind of normal for pastors' kids in the sense of like things that happened in the walls of the church were just kind of normal. So there was
How about the conference side?
the famous Christian side, which saying that phrase makes me want to go like get some scope and rinse my face out.
Oh yeah, no, it's true.
No, I mean, so when I was in high school, I was maybe freshman or sophomore in high school, I think. My dad walks into the kitchen one morning and he's like, I have a lunch meeting today. You might want to come. And I was like, why would I want to go to a lunch meeting with you? Those like that sounds boring. That's second only to like lunch and learn on the boring scale. Right. And he's like, well, we got a call from some band. And a couple of their guys are in town. And they wanted to grab lunch and talk about some missions type of things.
Okay.
He's like, I think the guy's name was Dan Hasseltine and whatever. So it's the lead singer of Jars of Clay.
Sure.
And then I think it was like Dan, I think a guy named Steven, and then their bass player at the time, I think his name's Aaron. And like they were in town and wanted to pick my dad's brain about, I don't know, theology, mission, whatever.
Okay.
So for listeners who are younger or were not into the Christian music scene, in the late 90s and early 2000s, Jars of Clay was huge. They
were the band.
And to be fair, they were also one of the only Christian bands who didn't make crappy music, too. Like, they were...
Sure.
So this was...
Looking at you, Third Day.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. Third Day was okay. Looking at you. Oh, let's not name names. This is going to get ugly fast.
They're the Christian Creed, but that's okay. Yeah, let's go for it.
They're the Christian Pearl Jam.
Oh.
They predated Creed.
Okay.
So,
all right.
With a Southern rock twist.
I could accept that.
Also used my last name to meet them at one point as well. So that may have happened
too.
So we go to but then to bring in classic John Piper into the meeting of Jars of Clay, my dad decides to have his assistant set up lunch at Olive Garden. So, like, it's not a cool place.
This is turning into an episode of The Office.
Yeah, my dad is like Michael Scott, except well, no, he's not at all like Michael Scott, but he has sort of the social norms awareness of a Michael Scott, just not in any inappropriate ways.
Sure.
And so here we are sitting at Olive Garden with you got your bottomless salad and breadsticks and Stouffer's pasta that they overcharge for. Yeah. Talking to I think they're Grammy Award winners. They were definitely multiple Dove Award winners. The peak Christian music people. And then just getting in our used Honda and driving home as if nothing had happened. And I think my dad didn't even know who they were. Yeah. I think he kind of knew that the band that the band was, but it just. So it was surreal in the moment. Right. In retrospect, it's super weird.
Yeah, well, yeah, like you picture yourself walking into Olive Garden, knowing who everybody is. Like, okay, there's a table with John Piper, Jars of Clay, and a high school kid who doesn't look like he wants to be here.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And what is going on?
And I distinctly remember thinking, this conversation is boring. I have things I would like to ask these guys about, and it has nothing to do with this stuff. And I mean, I'm sure they were kind and gracious to me. I have no negative impressions in retrospect, but yeah, they were not interested in my presence at all. Other than polite, oh, he brought them along. So then, that's one story. The other, this is probably the coolest thing that happened because my dad is famous. Christian famous again.
Christian famous.
So my dad's
he did speak at Microsoft. Microsoft knows who he is. So
11 people there do or something. Yeah. He probably walked in and was like, "Guys, I use Apple."
Here's the thing: you just ruined any chance at all that I had of getting your dad here on the podcast. It's like, wait, you had my son first? Oh, yeah, sorry, I can't.
I don't think that would hurt. He likes me. But no, so his first few books, so Desiring God, Pleasures of God, Future Grace, all were published with Multnomah.
Okay.
Back before it was purchased and became part of the Christian conglomerate of whatever. But
Sure.
But Multnomah's publicist / author relations person was a former NFL player whose name I can't remember. I want to say it was Keith something or other. But again, my dad and his totally doesn't understand that this is a big deal way. You know, we're sitting there having lunch or something. He's like, would you have any interest in going to a Vikings-Packers game? Because Keith was like, he can get us tickets or something. And I don't know, would that be fun? And I was like, are you nuts? Of course. I never got to go to games, even though we lived 3 blocks away, because they were always on Sundays. And like, that was a no-fly zone.
Yep.
So it turns out I wasn't just going to a game. I was going to a Monday night football game at Lambeau Field, Vikings-Packers, which if you're an NFL fan, you know that is a long-standing and heated rivalry.
Well, and I'm a diehard Packers fan.
Okay, well, you might remember this game. So this story is about to get better.
It is. Yeah.
So take all of that. Not only that, they're going to fly us up there. So we go to the little regional airport, get in like a 6-seater.
Wow.
It was probably like an hour and a half flight, but it would have been like a 5 or 6 hour drive, something like that.
Sure, yeah.
So they fly us up there. It's like the box seats in Lambeau. So not the luxury box, but like the ones that are behind the glass. So it's sort of theater-style seating, which is great because it's pouring rain. So it's an October game. It is 1998, which means the Packers had at that point something like a 36-game home winning streak. Brett Favre was at the peak of his powers. They were maybe a year or two removed from their World Series, Super Bowl championship. And this was Randy Moss's rookie year. And when he introduced himself to the country as the greatest wide receiver in the NFL at that point, and the Vikings just beat the brakes off the Packers. Yeah. Which, for a 14-year-old kid in enemy territory, watching my favorite team, who I thought was going to be decent, but you didn't know. But this is the year the Vikings went 15-1, broke all the scoring records. They just, it was the peak athletic enjoyment experience of my life to this day, and all because my dad wrote Desiring God. So, not sorry, Packers fans. That was just spectacular. It was so much fun.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Well, the only thing more heated that I have found between other than Packers and Vikings, that is a big one. You've got the Packers and Seahawks have turned into a...
Is that because of the Hail Mary game or something like that?
Yes, ever since which the Packers caught. The Packers caught that. I'm sorry, you're going to get me riled. But yeah,
I don't know.
No, Packers caught it. It was. But then ever since then, it's Seattle and Packers. It's huge over here.
I mean,
and I'm the only Packers fan.
I just gravitate towards whichever side leaves Packers fans unhappy. It's not very Christian of me, but here we are. Again, more confessions. Yeah, in all Christian love, I hope it's a miserable season for you.
Yeah, thank you. Same to you.
It's mutual. Feelings are mutual.
I don't have anything to say to that. I appreciate that. All right, Barnabas. Well, we are almost done, my friend, but not quite. No, we're moving on now to the segment we call Monday Hot Takes, and this is when I give you a bunch of random questions.
All right.
And you give me the very first thing that pops into your head.
It's like the Rorschach test of questions. All right.
It's like the Rorschach test of questions. Yeah. I'm going to hold it up, and you tell me what you see. Okay. All right, here we go. We're going to start off with an easy one here. Favorite band or musical artist that you're really into right now?
Gary Clark Jr.
Okay.
So he is a blues, R&B, rock type of guy. So sort of B.B. King, Luther Allison meets Jimi Hendrix, but with a voice that sounds a little bit more like Marvin Gaye.
Very cool. Very
kills.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, let's see. What's the worst book you've ever read?
Well, okay, so one of the podcasts I do is called Table of Malcontents. It is 3 middle-aged white dudes talking about books, and so we decided to branch out. We decided to collectively read The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks because thought that would be an engaging conversation. It is the most abysmal pile of words I have ever encountered that I can recall. It is so
hot steaming pile of words.
And it is a pile of words because when you put them sequentially the way he did, it's horrific. So yes, I think it's The Notebook.
All right, Barnabas. Besides war and diplomacy, what would be the best way for countries to settle disputes?
That's a good question. Trying to think of like an athletic competition that would be relatively like tug of war would be good.
Long darts.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like bocce. Bocce would be good.
Bocce. Hey,
like you bring your best
tournament.
bocce, but I think tug of war because it still has that sort of combative feel to it.
That's true.
I mean, every country must have a number of large, strong people.
Right, yeah, and they're just trying to like pull each other into a big pile of sanctions.
Right.
Yeah.
Tug of war. I think I would vote for that.
All right, love it. All right, what is one incredibly common thing that you have never done?
I have never watched an episode of Lost. How's that? Which for people
you
in
and
their
me both.
for people in their mid 30s like me, that was such a phenomenon that seems uncommon to me that I've never done that.
Right. Okay, what is one topic you could give a 20-minute presentation on without any prep?
The Minnesota Vikings, any of the
go.
books that I've written, the Minnesota Twins, podcasting. I mean, I basically talk for half of a living and all of my side gigs. So 20-minute presentations. Honestly, you could probably throw me a subject and I can make something up for 20 minutes.
Hey, there you go, man.
It's a gift
the art
and a
of
curse.
bluffing.
Yeah.
It is. That's how I got through college. Okay, what's something that a lot of people are missing out on because they don't know about it? Dude, I would say the blues.
That's where I was going because the other artist,
I love the
the
blues
other
song.
artist that I have listened to that I love, but he doesn't have as much of a catalog is a guy named Christone Kingfish Ingram, who is 20 years old. He's 20 years old from a small town in Mississippi, and he's a savant. And he's like classic blues, not so it's not sort of a blues influenced something else.
Yeah, like a Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of classic.
I mean, there's
Kinda like that, or
so
B.B. King?
he has one album called Kingfish, and he has songs that sound like Buddy Guy. He has songs that sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan. He has songs that sound like your deep Mississippi Delta blues from back in the day. Your B.B. King kind of more Chicago, Kansas City type of thing. So and he just does whatever. I saw him live at a venue here in Nashville, and
You shared a video of it.
Yeah, he's about 5'9". And 5'9" wide as well.
Yeah.
And just owns.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. All right, we'll keep it in the vein of music real quick. What's the worst genre of music?
Bro country. Yeah. And it's not close. I mean,
Thank you.
I
love that answer.
If forced to listen to like bad CCM or bro country, I would pick bad CCM.
All right, what wastes most time in your day-to-day life?
Social media.
All right, what do you resent paying for most?
I think, toll roads. So we don't have them in Nashville, but I live in the Chicago area, and paying to drive on a road just feels like, I don't know, it feels like usury.
They tax you to build the roads, and then they charge you to drive on the road
that you have paid to build. That's right.
Have paid for. So yeah, it's that and national parks for me. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, Barnabas, what fashion trend needs to be brought back?
Leisure suits.
Leisure suits.
Yep.
Oh man. All right. What is one of your favorite scenes from any movie?
Oh man.
I know.
All right. First one that comes to mind: the fireworks scene in The Sandlot, the 4th of July.
Okay.
All right. It was the one night game a year. The Sandlot is in my top 2 or 3 movies of ever. And that scene, that movie is full of wonderful scenes, but that scene is spectacular.
Okay. Quick offshoot question. Where do you stand on the movie The Goonies?
So I didn't see The Goonies until like last year.
Me too.
So
okay, yeah, and it'd been hyped up my entire life.
Well, so here's
as
the thing.
The greatest movie ever.
It's an era specific movie. So I think if you missed it in the 80s to mid 90s, kind of that coming of age time, like if I had watched it when I was 12, it might be a favorite. Watching it when I was 35, it's like watching anything from the 80s. You're like, that was a weird time.
That's fair.
Let's just say I'm withholding judgment because I feel like if you needed to intersect with that at just the right time.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. All right, Barnabas, if you were a pro wrestler, what would your entrance song be?
The funny thing is, all I can think of is other pro wrestlers' entrance songs from playing like WWE versus WCW on N64 back in the day.
Right.
Ride on Our Enemies by Tupac.
Oh, okay. Very cool. I like it. That would work. All right, coffee or tea?
Coffee. Black.
Black. All right. What is something about current Christian culture that's annoying to you? One thing, Barnabas.
Celebrity.
Yep, it's the whole celebrity movement thing. Yep, I agree. Very cool. All right, let's see. If you had to close one fast food chain, which one's closing?
White Castle.
White Castle. Ooh, you made a lot of people mad there.
I mean, I haven't been to White Castle in like 20 years, but I can still smell it, and I think occasionally still burp it up. So yeah, it needs to go.
What's one food that you could not live without?
Beef.
Just beef.
Yeah, the whole cow. I'm not picky, but it provides so much goodness.
All right. Favorite movie? You said you had like a top 3. So
yeah,
if it's easier, you can go top 3.
Yeah, so The Sandlot would be up there. The Godfather would be up there.
Oh.
Godfather 1 and 2 are kind of
1 and 2.
Yeah, God 3 never happened. Let's see.
Kind of like the Spider-Man trilogy. Yeah.
The Princess Bride would be in the top 3 to 5 as well.
Great movie.
I think probably those 3.
All right, nuts and cookies, yes or no?
Absolutely not. That was almost got me to swear about that one.
Thank you. All right, Barnabas, if you had to do karaoke, what would be your karaoke song?
It would have to be an 80s ballad. Probably Meatloaf's I Would Do Anything for Love.
Love it. Well, Barnabas, we have come to the end of the podcast, my friend. Before we get going here, I just want to roll out the red carpet for you. Go ahead and tell people where they can find you, where they can get books, where they can listen to you.
Yeah, so I have my website is just barnabaspiper.com, and it is, it's where we host our podcast, The Happy Rant. You can find out more about books there. I'm on Twitter at Barnabas Piper. The books are, actually my first 2 books are out of print right now, temporarily, because they're moving from one publisher to another. So The Pastor's Kid and Help My Unbelief, there are copies out there. But if you wait until early next year, they will be re-released from the Good Book Company. And so kind of with some fresh content and things. And then The Curious Christian is my 3rd book, and it's available I don't know, wherever you buy books. So,
well, hey, everyone, you know what you can do? You can head on over to iTunes and leave us a raving review, 5-star rating. We really appreciate that. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Music, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. Head on over to Facebook.com/EverydayMondayPodcast, Instagram at EverydayMondayPod. I just now realized how much like Doctrine and Devotion I sound by rattling that off as fast as I do.
I've never listened to them, so I have no idea. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, they do this. It's really fast at the end, and I'm just realizing now I sound like that.
To be fair, if Jimmy is talking, it's always fast. Like he's always.
And it's Jimmy that does it.
Motor mouth. So.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Well, thank you all for joining us in the trenches today. We will catch you on the next step of Every Day a Monday.